Hello and welcome to another NihongoGamer video. As you know, I'm constantly on the lookout for new games that are fun to play and ideal to play on the Steam Deck, and here's one I just found recently called Little Noah on Steam. So I'd never heard of this game before, it just showed up on my Steam homepage, so I clicked on it, watched the trailer, and I was like, wow, this is like if Mega Man X and Bravely Default had a baby. And actually, after trying it out, it's not too far off. Now, first of all, this is a genre I don't really play that often, action role-playing platform. So if you play this genre a lot, you probably already know what to expect, but for me, the words action, role-playing, and platformer are just three completely separate genres, and I didn't really know what to expect by mixing them together for a single game. Anyway, after watching the trailer, I thought the platforming action looked like a lot of fun. The visual style was very Bravely Default. It had that tilt-shift look where the background is really blurry. And then on top of that, instead of just hacking and slashing, you actually seem to carry around these Pikmin or Pokemon that kind of follow you around. And it turns out this is what makes the battle system so much fun, because instead of just being a character with a standard 3-hit combo, the length of the combo actually depends on how many of the little characters you're carrying around, and which characters you choose will change your strategy. Now, to frame this whole experience, remember, I'm looking for games that are fun to play specifically on Steam Deck. So that's games that are fun to play while handheld, games that are fun to play in short bursts, and games that actually look alright and are readable on a small screen. So on my first run of the game, I instantly thought to myself, okay, these characters are really small, and this is probably designed to be played on a really large screen. But the thing is, I think for this genre, it's actually quite common to have small characters on a screen where you can see lots of enemies, even the ones that are a little bit further away. And the reason I think the characters seemed a little bit too small to me was just that the characters look really awesome, it's just that you can't see the detail because you're so far away from them. So it's not really the size of the character that's the problem, it's just that since they're so small, it's a bit of a shame that you can't see all the detail because they look really cool. Especially because the minions that you carry around with you have some really cool attacks and great animations, but it's like, they're so small you kind of feel like you're missing out unless you're zoomed in. And depending on which part of the level you're in, the game does zoom in a little bit for you, but you're never really close enough to truly appreciate the details on these characters. And I'm going to stop calling them characters now. The little minions that follow you around and do the fighting for you, they're called Lilliputs. Now, instantly the battle system seems simple and easy to control, but definitely you can tell right off the bat that there's going to be a bit of depth in there as well. Mostly because you've got a dash button, so you can cancel out of animations. Now, I don't know how original a concept it is to have random level generation, but even though the game does explain it to you, I feel like it wasn't explained clearly enough that I actually understood immediately. And so actually, when I first jumped in to play it, I actually thought I'd failed the tutorial and that I would have to play the tutorial again. But after that first experience, it slowly started to make sense to me what was going on. Unlike platformers like Mario or Mega Man, you don't just play through a bunch of predetermined maps, get to the boss, and then finish the game. What actually happens is you've got your base character who goes into a randomly generated dungeon. You do as much as you can and fight as far as you can, but eventually when you do run out of HP and get knocked out, you get sent back to the airship, and all the progress that you made and all the items that you found get converted into one resource known as mana. And you use that mana to level up your character like you would in any RPG. You just choose the stats that you want to get stronger at and the stats that you think are going to be more useful to your playstyle. And then you go back in and play a randomly generated dungeon again. Now, the thing is, these dungeons are not completely random. You've got a bunch of patterns that are set for level 1, a bunch of patterns that are set for level 2, and basically they'll mix up the different maps so that instead of trying to run through a level in a predetermined way as fast and efficiently as possible, what you're really doing is exploring different variations of level 1 and trying to find the most efficient way to level up as much as you can before you get to the level 1 boss. Then you get to level 2 and you do the same thing again. And this mechanic is what makes the game work so well, and especially so on the Steam Deck. Because in a standard RPG or platformer, you're progressing through the story or you're progressing through matches and levels, and you don't want to lose that progress, so you feel a lot of pressure to not die. But in this game, Little Noah, no matter how far you get, when you eventually get knocked out, your progress all gets converted back to mana, which you can use exactly as you normally would to level up your character again. And so while normally there's pressure in a platform game to finish an actual level, otherwise you'll lose that progress, in Little Noah it doesn't really matter whether you finished a level or not. Which means that if you're waiting for the bus or you're just sitting on the bus and you need to get off the stop right now, then of course you can put your Steam Deck in standby mode, or you can just let yourself get knocked out, convert all that progress into mana, and then use that to upgrade yourself. So physically, the game makes sure that you're rewarded for any amount of game that you play, but also just mentally before you turn the game on, I feel like sometimes I don't want to start a level if I know that I'm not going to have enough time to finish. So not only is Little Noah an easy game to switch off in a hurry, but it's also a game I'm more likely to switch on because I know it doesn't really matter how much time I have to play. And this just makes the whole experience really addictive because you always want to go back in for just a little bit more and just level up your character a little bit more. And it's like, okay, I've got 380 mana, but I need 400 in order to upgrade my HP stats or my attack stats. So maybe I'll just pop in for a little bit. I might not finish like a 10-minute level or a 20-minute run, but as long as I get a little bit, I can convert that into mana. I can go back, I can upgrade my character, build up my attack stats, and it really makes you think, okay, this is what Cygames is really good at. You know, they really built up their empire through mobile games, Grand Blue Fantasy, Uma Musume. They know what it means to have a gameplay loop that works and is addictive on a very short-term basis. People are only picking it up for a couple minutes at a time, or people are spending 20 minutes playing this game. They know what's addictive. In terms of gameplay, Little Noah does such a good job of mixing action, role-playing, platforming, and even a little bit of fighting elements into it. Because you're getting good at the action part, but you also need to be fairly good at jumping around on the platforms and not bumping into things and spikes. But then you can also cancel out of moves just like you would in a fighting game, and so the combo system is good fun. Because of the RPG elements, you're constantly making choices about whether you want to get stronger at short distance attacks or long distance attacks, or you want to get stronger every time you do a long combo. And then every time you go back to the airship, you can upgrade and get new abilities. Abilities like stopping time and then being able to dash attack in any direction that you want. Cygames is clearly really good at mixing elements from different genres together. When you think about Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, they got Arxis to make a fighting game for them, but they put cooldown timers and one-button specials, things that you would more commonly find in non-fighting games. Visually speaking, Little Noah is such a treat to look at. Every time you go into a level, you know it's going to be a completely different experience, but with thematically consistent elements. The characters are cool. The Lilliput characters are hugely varied. They go from simple sword swipe animations to actual dragon punches to dragons that jump up in the air and spit fire. If your burst gauge is charged, then you can release a super move which has a proper cinematic animation to it. And the way they use tilt-shift visuals gives everything this toy-like quality, while also really emphasizing that feeling of distance and everything being really far away and having a very vast world. Now, when it comes to controls, it's really important that this game runs well with the built-in controls on the Steam Deck, because I want to be playing this handheld. I don't want to always bring a separate controller with me. And I spent most of my first playthroughs playing on the D-pad, and I thought it worked perfectly. I absolutely loved the D-pad on the Steam Deck for this game, and the face buttons do a perfectly adequate job for your attacks. Something I'm starting to notice more and more on the Steam Deck is that your fingers very naturally fall down to the L2 and R2 buttons instead of the R1 and L1, so I'm always very readily able to press R2 for my dash, but I always feel like I have to shift my fingers very consciously back up to L1 and R1 for things like potions or interacting with things. Now, the last thing I have to say about controls is that actually I didn't realize that you're supposed to play this game on analog stick. They let you use the D-pad, and I much prefer to play these action platformer games on a D-pad because it's just faster and more accurate. But it wasn't until quite a few days later that I realized one of the attacks actually requires you to use the analog stick, because you pause time, you choose a direction to dash into, and if you're using the D-pad, you've only got 8 directions that you can choose. So suppose if you want to, you could play most of the game on D-pad and then switch to the analog stick when you do those multi-directional 360-degree attacks. But I just thought it's quite funny that I had spent basically the whole week getting used to playing the game on D-pad and then discovering later that I should have been playing the whole time on analog stick so I can take advantage of those attacks. When it comes to the music in this game, I really enjoyed the chilled out, Grand Blue, relaxed vibe that they've got going in this game. There's a lot of action in the game, so they could have artificially made the game feel more exciting by having pumping, heavy music in it all the time. But I really appreciate being able to play something that's action, platformer oriented, but with a more RPG, fantasy vibe that really helps me enjoy the game at a more relaxed pace. Listen, that's all I've got time for today. Just wanted to recommend this game, Little Noah. I think it works especially well on Steam Deck, mainly because it does a lot of things that normal platformers or normal RPGs don't do, which make it particularly easy to switch off, and actually particularly easy to switch on. Just mentally you're in that state where it's like, okay, it's not going to take that long, and even if it does seem like it's going to take long, I can just KO myself and then take the benefits of all that converted mana. As a bonus, it's also really inexpensive. It's something like $13 or $14, and I think you can spend an extra $5 if you want the DLC 1 and 2 pass bit. But as far as I can tell, the DLC is mostly avatars and Lilliputs. It's quite a good strategy, selling the base game at a really low price for people who just want the gameplay aspects. But for a game with very Grand Blue Fantasy style visuals, people are really going to want that Avatar DLC, so I can see them making quite a bit of extra money just on that. I've got plenty of other Steam Deck videos, so be sure to check out the playlist, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, leave a comment below, especially if you like this game or if you're interested in checking this game out. You can follow me on Twitter at NihongoGamer, and of course you can also join the NihongoGamer Discord so you can talk and meet other people who are interested in the topics that I cover on this channel. So that's all for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next NihongoGamer video.